We're an American family of 3 living in the countryside of southwest France since 2022. We live in a village of about 3,000 at the edge of the Dordogne and the Lot-et-Garonne departments.
We only meant to come here to France for a year to take a break from the fast pace of life in the US and show our 11-year-old daughter a little bit of the world. But it's 2025, 3 years later, and we're still here.
In this video with International Living, we are going to talk about what made us decide to stay in France instead of returning to our lives in the US. We considered Portugal, Italy, and Spain, but we didn't feel the same draw that we did to France.
Yeah, like a lot of Americans, we definitely had a very romantic vision about the slower pace of life, shopping for gorgeous produce at the French markets. And if we were gonna have to learn a language, we loved the sound of French. And, in addition, France had a really great position in Europe for traveling around to all the surrounding countries, which we were planning to do a lot of during our one-year sabbatical.
Since I was already working for myself in the US as a life and focus coach for small business owners, when we found out there was a French visa I qualified for, and so I could continue to work and just move my business with us to France, that really sealed the deal that France was the place we'd settle in for this year of living abroad. Once we arrived, it turned out to be the things that we didn't really anticipate or know beforehand that actually led us to stay. And those are the things we want to share with you today in this video. So the very first thing was just like the variety of geography and access to outdoor activity from almost anywhere in France you can get. Where we lived in Texas almost our whole lives, both of us. And right before we moved to France, we had moved to Colorado for about 18 months to have more access to the outdoors, better weather, just being outside more, with more things to do. So when we got here, I didn't realize before this, France is about the same size as Texas, but oh my gosh, there's 3 mountain ranges, varying sizes. There are 2 different coastlines that have very different character. And honestly, you can pretty much be to any of that stuff within 4 to 6 hours from almost anywhere in France.
Yeah, so many different river valleys, and you can just feel like you're in very different places.
Yeah,
in a very short amount of
for
time.
a weekend. Whereas,
Yeah, one of these big ones, so when we were in the U.S., I never liked the ocean. I just wasn't an ocean person. Gulf Coast, Atlantic Coast, Pacific, it didn't matter. That wasn't my thing. And one weekend, we went for a long trip to the Mediterranean, and we discovered snorkeling. Me and my daughter went snorkeling for the first time. We bought some masks, some flippers. We thought we'd go try it. And once we were out there in the water, it was just a whole different world. The experience of being in the water on the beach, we found a couple octopi, I guess.
We were like, this is why people move to the Côte d'Azur.
Yeah.
But it was a whole new world. And I remember in Colorado, we loved it because we loved being there at the mountains. But we couldn't also drive to an amazing ocean. And
now that we're here, we can do both.
We can do both. The second one is the people. I think that, especially in the US, to be honest, the French people kind of get a bad rap.
Sometimes.
People have this perception that the French are a bit aloof or might even be a little bit rude. And that literally just has not been our experience at all.
Yeah, when we first got here, we were very nervous about our level of French. We knew no French. I think we knew bonjour, merci, and we got those confused sometimes.
It was really bad,
It was
y'all.
embarrassing.
We did start learning French before we left, but there was a really short time from when we decided to go to when we came.
Yeah.
And there wasn't much time to learn a lot.
Yeah, I think we were nervous about what would the actions of life be like, but more so, what would the interactions with French people be like? How well accepted would we be? Would we feel like we're these perennial outsiders?
Right. Even though we were working to learn.
And we haven't had that feeling at all.
No.
We felt very embraced, very accepted, and part of that we've been learning, we've been trying, we've been putting ourselves out there.
But that's the thing, if you try, they try.
On peut avoir de Saint-Nectaire, un petit peu comme pour 3 personnes.
Morceaux de... Ça dépend, c'est gros crémage beaucoup.
Un peu.
Like, you hear these rumors about, don't butcher my language, but like, not at all. I mean, people are so receptive to your attempts at terrible French, and then sometimes Franglish if they know a little English.
Yeah, we were, on the same line, we were really nervous about our daughter's experience, bringing her as an 11-year-old, going into her first year of middle school.
In a new country.
In a new country.
In a new language.
In a new language. She, again, just like us, had no French skills.
We're are we the worst parents or the best parents for taking her on this adventure?
Yeah, but, and so at the time, that was nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
And looking back on it, we got so much support from the teachers, the administrative staff, the other students that were around her. She was just like fully embraced and welcomed.
Yeah.
We felt very in touch with what was happening in school, and she got a lot of support on her language skills and on her general education.
Yeah, I mean, her FLE teacher was just amazing. And that isn't to say that it wasn't hard. I mean, those first few months were definitely hard, but I think the difference is you can do hard things if you feel like you have the support.
There's really a sense of solidarity and community here with, kind of our local, French community here that we've ensconced ourselves in. A togetherness at times.
It's like this approach that if there's a problem that's in public, it's everyone's problem. That feels very different to me, that we've seen. I mean, just even sometimes people will say, that's because you're in the countryside. If you were in Paris, it would be different.
You'd feel differently.
But even in Paris, like, I have been amazed at how people will sometimes go out of their way to be helpful.
Yeah, you remember we were waiting for a bus and standing there as a group, waiting. And a gentleman walking his dog came across the street, came back around out of his way, and spoke to us in French to explain that the bus wasn't running today and the sign hadn't been updated and we would never know.
He just lived there and he knew.
He knew. So he came over and he explained which bus we needed to take, where we were trying to get to, and he helped us through that. And there was no reason for him to do that. He just saw a problem and he went to fix it. Yeah.
So that has really been consistent throughout France, and we have been just so grateful for the kindness. And building on that, I think also, I mean, we live in the countryside, small town village of around 3,000. And I think as someone who grew up in a rural area in Texas, I definitely had an idea of what living in a rural area was like. And frankly, a lot of times there's just not much to do. It can feel a little isolating. And I have been surprised over and over. And it's part of the reason we've chosen to actually stay in this area is because of how active even like small countryside areas are. It just amazes me. The amount of just vibrant life that maybe if you're just driving through the village, you don't realize is there right off the bat. But France has something, this really strong sense of community organizations that they call associations. These are usually listed with the town hall, and they're basically nonprofit groups of people who come together for specific purposes. And this could be playing pétanque or line dancing or like organizing to make sure that the elderly are taken care of. And the big difference here in the US, because there are definitely groups, that you can join for activities and to contribute and volunteer in your community in the US, absolutely. But these are usually private organizations, right? They're privately run, nonprofits or churches or the Lions Club. And that's not the case in France. These are really public groups connected to the town hall that you can find easily, and that you don't need to be a member of something else to then join this thing you want to be a part of. You can just be a part of that thing.
Yeah, I think we've both really been surprised at just how year-round the activity here is. Kind of out in the countryside. In the winter, things quiet down a little bit, but we've still got, rugby club. We've got the rugby games. We have big dinners out next to the rugby field with all the fans, and
it's very cool.
It's like a multi-course meal before we go watch the rugby game.
Yeah.
Quiz nights during the week, where there's trivia, volunteer-run cinema, so we can see some older movies, some newer movies, some in French, some in English. Art expositions are brought in, and there's some really nice things to go see. And a theater that's run, and local troops come in and they put on plays throughout the year.
Yeah.
Things really kick off in the summer. Summer's definitely the busiest time of year. It's just so much fun. There's so many things to do. Here locally, we've got the night markets or marché gourmands, which they're like town festivals. And the whole community kind of comes together, and there's usually music and dancing and activities to do and food. So much good food.
Yeah, they set up long tables somewhere in the middle of the villages, and people bring all their things and set their tables, and then visit all of the food vendors that have come.
I love it. You bring your plate, you bring your fork and knife and a cup, and then you go around and find some food, you buy it, and you sit down and you kind of eat with the community.
See your friends from neighboring villages or meet some new ones.
The really fun thing around here is that we've got, there's so many small villages and so many small towns that all have their night markets throughout the week. And the mayors, the towns, they coordinate with each other so that they're kind of scheduled on different nights. So it's possible, I don't know if it's a good idea, but it's possible that really every night during the week, during the summer, you could go to different village night markets. And there's slightly different food and a slightly different scene, slightly different event, and different groups of people. But every night there's a party in the countryside that you can go to.
One of our friends last summer said, "I'm so ready for summer to be over. I'm so exhausted." So it's kind of funny, but it was something that surprised us that we found this, and every rural area is a little different, right? So you got to find the one that has the character that matches what you're looking for. And we chose this area partly because it is lively, but it feels like a wonderful combination of like countryside tranquility. You hear the birds in the morning and this vibrant social fabric. And that was an unexpected combination.
Yeah, a great surprise. Yeah. The next big reason that we stayed was just healthcare. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I've been so my entire life. So healthcare was a big deal. And we knew before we moved that France had a really highly rated healthcare system, but I had no idea, because I hadn't experienced it, what that would be like exactly.
Right. We only had the frame of reference of the U.S.
Right.
A privatized system of individual insurance, usually associated with your job.
Yeah. So, upon arriving here, it was just an incredible experience how quickly we were able to kind of find an initial doctor, go to the doctor, get care, get all my medications filled. And just over and over and over, we've had just great experiences with all the medical professionals we work with, whether it's eye care, dental, my diabetes, general practitioners, healthcare for our daughter. And so that's all been nice. But the thing I've been most impressed with just how it feels easy, right? It feels simple. That the doctors and the pharmacists and the medical device providers are all kind of working together.
Yeah, there's no thinking about like, oh, this is out of network. Wait, we paid this much deductible. Oh no, we have to go to there's just none of that.
Yeah, I don't have to think about that.
It's so much more seamless.
Yeah, so it's just been great care. It's been easy once I found that first doctor and got into the system.
Yeah, and you will see, I know there's been a lot of press about medical deserts in France. And this is a real issue. But I would say coming from the US, it doesn't feel any different than it did in the US does. I mean, it took us a few months to find a GP that would be our médecin traitant, like kind of your long-term primary care doctor. But that was the same in the US.
Yeah, it takes time to set that stuff up in the US.
We drive about 40 minutes to see his endocrinologist. She's in a bigger town that's a little ways from us, and again, it took maybe 3 months, I guess, to wait to see her to get a new patient appointment. Yeah. But again, honestly, it was pretty similar in the US.
Yeah.
So to me, we haven't really experienced that as a problem. And it certainly hasn't been any different than what we were already used to in the US. It's just been a really pleasant surprise that it's actually been easier to navigate than we find the US system. Yeah. All right, the last thing that we cannot make this video without talking about, because it surprised us too, is cost of living.
Yeah, this was a big deal. I mean, we were coming here for a year initially. We had some money set aside. Right. We were ready for it to cost kind of whatever it cost.
But we thought that would be similar to the US.
Yeah, and while we were here that first year, we realized we were living comfortably on half of what we were spending in the US.
Better in some ways, actually.
Yeah, and this was, we were renting the first 2 years. We were renting a furnished kind of vacation houses.
Right, in the off season, all the bills paid.
Those were a little more expensive. We were paying around $1,300 a month. And then as we decided that we might want to stay here long term, we started to look at maybe we should be looking at buying.
Yeah.
We should be making a longer term commitment to housing. And we realized that we could sell our existing house in the US, which still had a mortgage on it. We didn't think we had that much equity involved, but we could use that equity from that sale to buy a house outright here in France.
Right. And we're not talking about, we didn't own like some estate in, Bel Air, California.
No, it was a very modest, small house in Texas.
3-2 with a small yard.
Yeah. And we were able to get here, I guess it was kind of a dream house. It was a 5-bedroom, a house built around the French Revolution, that has some of the original stuff still in it, and a large garden with fruit trees, a small creek up at the top. It's just kind of an amazing place.
We felt it was the kind of place that we had always wanted in the U.S., but just felt completely out of reach. And we had always wanted to do like a renovation project on a historic house.
Yeah, we had a lot of flexibility to spend some money renovating and refinishing the house because that purchase price was so reasonable and low to begin with.
Yeah. So, like, as we were putting all of these things together and realizing the flexibility that we would have here just to spend more time together as a family to do things that we enjoy doing, it really felt like the quality of life here in France was higher for a much lower price than what we could put together in the U.S.
Even though we're still here in our working years, we're working full-time, raising a child, learning French, there's
renovating a house,
but there's still a real group and cultural emphasis on enjoying your life. People prioritize the time spent with loved ones, doing things you enjoy, engaging in local traditions, and just kind of living day to day.
And just the fact that we feel welcomed here by the French people and the French Republic. I think I personally realized I had made this mental switch when we were visiting the U.S. We were in the midst of buying this house, and the realtor called us, and it was like an odd hour, and then she said, "Oh no, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize you were at home, or I wouldn't have called at this time." And I was like, "At home? We're not in France. We're in the U.S." And all of a sudden I realized, wow, like what I identify as our place, as home, has changed. And I think that was the moment I realized, like, okay, this is where we want to be.
Yeah, it's home now. Mm-hmm. If you're interested more specifically on moving from the U.S. to France, you can come join us at our YouTube channel, Baguette Bound. We'd love to see you.
Thanks for watching.
A bientôt.